1921 and died on 23rd April 1992. He was awarded the honorary Oscars also in 1992. He got the Bharat Ratna in 1992 also, and his movie and his documentaries and movies won acclaim all over the world, and especially at the Cannes Film Festival also. He got the much coveted award there, and so everybody knows about Satyajit Ray, whoever is interested in films, because Satyajit Ray brought a new genre of filmmaking, and brought a new era of filmmaking and serious movies, and he was that's why he's considered as India's greatest filmmaker, and he brought much honor to India from all international quarters. So this was about Satyajit Ray. We will now go on to the pronunciation drill and the meanings of words that you have here. Let us go to the words. The first word is recalled. Recalled. Say it again. Recalled. Recalled means remembered. He remembered. He recalled. The next word is sleuthing. Sleuthing. You know this word. I had mentioned it in the previous class also. The word sleuthing means investigating. Investigating something. So, investigating a case. So, a person who is investigating is called a sleuth. So, he is an investigator. He is a sleuth. The next word is conscientious. Conscientious. Conscientious means honest or diligent. You always mention it with a worker. A conscientious worker means someone who is an honest worker and who likes to work honestly, or he is very diligent in his work. He does his work very properly and meticulously. The next word is tranquilizer. Have you heard of this word, children? Tranquilizer. Tranquilizer is a drug used to reduce mental tension. Now, you must have heard about the tranquilizing gun that the forest rangers keep with them. So this is to pacify the wild animal. If supposing a wild animal is caught in a snare, or he has hurt, the animal has hurt itself, the forest rangers, they have tranquilizing guns so that the animal will sleep, and then they can treat the animal. In human beings, the doctors prescribe tranquilizers if they have some mental tension, so they can calm down. So the tranquilizer has a calming effect. You also have the word tranquil. Tranquil is an adjective. When you say the tranquil waters of the lake. Tranquil waters of the lake. The lake has calm waters, so that is tranquil. And here it's a tranquilizer, the drug that reduces mental tension and has a calming effect on a person. The last phrase is a phrase, beat about the bush. I'm sorry, the H is missing there. Maybe it got deleted somehow. So, beat about the bush. This is an idiom. It means to discuss a topic but omit its main point. So often it is done intentionally, means purposely. When someone wants to say something but is not able to tell you directly, so you beat about the bush. Sometimes when you tell your parents that you did not score good marks, you talk about so many things, that the paper was so tough and the teacher had not taught properly, or you were absent when it was taught. That's why you could not. You don't say that I don't have good marks, father. You just beat about the bush. You say in a roundabout way. Okay? So you don't come to the point. You just beat about the bush. I'm sure you've understood these words. Let's go on to the text. The text, if you remember, I'll start with the first line here. Next day, In the office, Bepin Babu noticed that with every passing hour, the previous day's encounter was occupying more and more of his mind. So when Bepin Babu went to the office the next day, he noted, what did he note? That with every hour, the previous passing hour, by the hour, the previous day's encounter, there was an encounter, something happened, was occupying more and more of his mind. His mind was full of it, of what had happened yesterday. Encounter means what had happened yesterday. Now, encounter, what had happened with him? You remember? He was in Newmarket at a bookstore, and he had bought 5 books. You remember? His hobby was to read books. So every Monday he went to buy books, and he bought 5 books that would last him through the week. So every week he finished reading 5 books. Can you imagine? And so that's he was a voracious reader. And so that man had it was a stranger, he said, and he did not recognize the man, but the man seemed to recognize him. His name was Parimal Ghosh, and he recognized him, and he said, well, we met in Ranchi. You don't remember me? We met in Ranchi. I was the man who arranged the car for you. I met you every day for a week. And still Bepin Babu could not remember his trip to Ranchi. And he was saying, you're mistaken. But the man knew everything about him. He knew what were the intimate details. He knew that he always carried a bag of books with him. Even when he went sightseeing, he had a bag of books with him. His wife had died 10 years before, and his brother had died of insanity in a mental hospital. And also that he had hurt his right knee, that there was a mark on his right knee, a cut mark. So that scar was, and he checked it, and he definitely had a scar. Remember, he was sitting in the car, and he rolled up his trousers, and he saw on his knee there was a cut mark. And so he was quite confused. The man knew everything. Everything was correct. Just one thing was wrong, that he had been to Ranchi, and he just could not remember his trip to Ranchi. So the next day his mind was filled with this. He just could not forget that man. If the man knew so much about Bepin Babu, how could he make such a mistake about the Ranchi trip? So he said, if he knew everything, how could he make a mistake about this trip? Just before lunch, Bepin Babu decided to ring up Dinesh Mukherjee. You remember that man had said Dinesh Mukherjee was also there. So he decided, now I'm going to call him. It was better to settle the question over the phone. At least the embarrassment on his face wouldn't show. So he thought it is better to phone him rather than to visit him. Face to face, that man will not see how embarrassed he is about asking, that he will think that he has lost his mind. 235616. So he dialed, Bepin Babu dialed the number. Hello, is that Dinesh? This is Bepin here. Well, what's the news? So Dinesh says, well, what's the news? I just wanted to find out if you recalled an incident which took place in 58. Bepin Babu said, I just wanted to find out if you remember something that happened in 58. 58 means 1958. 58? What incident? Were you in Calcutta right through that year? That's the first thing I've got to know. So he says, were you in Calcutta throughout the year? He's asking. Bepin Babu is asking. He says, that's the first thing I want to know. Were you here in Calcutta at that time? Wait, just a minute. Now, on the other side, Dinesh is thinking. 58. Just let me check in my diary. He says, well, let me check in my diary. See, they write everything in their diary, so all their appointments and everything. So he said, well, let me check in my diary. For a minute, there was silence. Bepin Babu could feel that his heartbeat had gone up. He was sweating a little. Now, Bepin Babu was also sweating. His heartbeat had increased. And so, hello. Yes, I've got it. I'd been out twice. Now, Dinesh is saying, twice I went out. Where? Bepin Babu is asking where. Once in February nearby to Krishnanagar to a nephew's wedding. So he said, I went twice in that year. I went to nearby Krishnanagar, it was his nephew's wedding. And then he said, but you'd know about this one. He said, and then I went to bed and said, but you know about this trip, the trip to Ranchi. You were there too. He said, you were also there in Ranchi. That's all. But what's all this sleuthing about? He says, well, that's all. I went only twice. Once to Krishnanagar for the wedding, and once I went to Ranchi. He said, but you know that you were there at Ranchi too. He said, but what's all this sleuthing about it? Why are you investigating? Like an investigator, you are investigating all these things. Why all this sleuthing? No, I just wanted to... Anyway, thanks. He said, well, he did not give him the real reason. Bepin Babu did not give him the real reason. He said, okay, thanks anyway. Thanks. Bepin Babu slammed the receiver down and gripped his head with his hands. He felt his head swimming. He slammed it down. Slam means to put it down with great force. And he gripped his head. He held his head in his hands. His head was now swimming. A chill seemed to spread over his body. He had gone cold. There were sandwiches in his tiffin box, but he didn't eat them. He had lost his appetite. Now in his tiffin box he had sandwiches, but he didn't feel like eating. He had lost all his appetite. Now he's so worried. He's thinking, I'm losing my mind. Why can I not remember this trip to Ranchi? He just cannot remember. That's a great mystery for him now. After lunchtime, Bepin Babu realized that he couldn't possibly carry on sitting at his desk and working. So he said, now I cannot carry on working here now. It was after lunchtime. He realized because his mind was in such a turmoil, his head was swimming. This had never happened in the 25 years he had been with the firm. So now it had never happened to him like this. He had always been very alert, very good worker. So it means that he was working there for the last 25 years in that firm. Firm means a company. He had a reputation for being a tireless, conscientious worker. He had a good reputation there. What was his reputation? He was tireless. He never got tired of working. He was a conscientious worker. He was a very hard-working man, a very honest worker. But today, his head was in a whirl. In a whirl means his head was swimming. Everything is going round and round in his mind. Back home at 2:30, Bepin Babu lay down in bed and tried to gather his wits together. Now, so he went back home at 2:30, arrived home. So it means that he took a half-day leave. So it had never happened. It was the first time that he took a half-day in all the 25 years that he had worked there. So he just lay down in his bed and he tried to keep himself calm, to get his wits together, means to calm down. He knew that it was possible to lose one's memory through an injury in the head, but he didn't know of a single instance of someone remembering everything except one particular incident, and a fairly recent and significant one at that. Now he said he's thinking. He knew that it was possible to lose your memory, but if someone loses his memory, he loses his memory through some injury in the head. But he did not know of anybody who could forget just one incident and remember everything else. And also this incident that was not very long ago. And it was a very important incident that he had been to Ranchi. How could he forget this? He just could not remember going to Ranchi. He had always wanted to go to Ranchi. To have gone there, done things, and not to remember was something utterly impossible. Now he's thinking, what is utterly? Means absolutely impossible. What is absolutely impossible? It was absolutely impossible to go somewhere. He says to have gone to Ranchi and you do things there. He had done things there. He had been to different places and he had stayed at a guest house as that man had said. And he says, and then you don't remember anything of it. He says it is absolutely impossible. At 7:30, Bepin Babu's servant came and announced, "Chunni Babu, sir, says it's very important." Now Bepin Babu's servant came and he announced, "Sir, Chunni Babu has come to meet you and he says it is very important." Bepin Babu knew what Chunni had come for. Now Bepin Babu knew why he had come. Chunni Lal had been at school with him. Now they were schoolmates. When they were little, they went to school together. He'd been having a rough time lately and had been coming to see him about a job. Now Chunni Lal had problems, so he had been coming to to get a job for himself, and he was requesting Bepin Babu to give him a job. Bepin Babu knew it was not possible to do anything for him, and in fact told him so. So Bepin Babu was very outspoken, and very clearly he had told him that it is impossible for him to get him a job. But Chunni kept turning up like a bad penny. You know what a bad penny? Like a bad penny. You know, or sometimes you have one bad coin, and when you don't want to, that coin is kept in your bag. And when you don't need it, but every time you put your hand in the bag, you get that bad coin in your hand. So that is like a bad penny. So he kept turning up. Again and again he would come, just like a bad coin. Bepin Babu sent word that not only was it not possible for him to see Chunni now, but not in several weeks. He said, he sent word, he sent message through the servant. He says, it is not possible for him to meet you now, but not only now, but also for several weeks I will not be able to see you. But as soon as the servant stepped out of the room, it struck Bepin Babu that Chunni might remember something about the 58 trip. 58 trip means 1958 trip. So as soon as the servant went, it struck him, oh, I guess Chunni might know something. He might remember something. There was no harm in asking him. He said, well, let me ask him. There's no harm. Bepin Babu hurried down the stairs and into the living room. So he went to his drawing room. That is the living room. He hurried down. Very fast he went down the stairs. Chunni was about to leave. He was about to leave, but seeing Bepin Babu appear, he turned round hopefully. So he turned round very hopefully. Oh, maybe now Bepin Babu is going to get me a job. Bepin Babu didn't beat about the bush. Bepin Babu did not beat about the bush. If you remember, beat about the bush means he did not speak in a roundabout way. He came directly to the point. Listen, Chunni, I want to ask you something. You have a good memory, and you've been seeing me off and on for a long time. He says, off and on, you see me. For a long time, you come and see me. Many times we've met. You have a good memory. Just throw your mind back and tell me. Did I go to Ranchi in 1958? Chunni said, 58? It must have been 58. Or was it 59? Now Chunni is remembering. He said, of course. Was it 58 or 59? Must have been 59. You're sure that I did go to Ranchi? Bepin Babu asked him, are you sure? Chunni's look of amazement was not unmixed with worry. So he was amazed. Chunni Lal was amazed. He looked at him in amazement. And also it was mixed with worry. Not unmixed means it was mixed with worry. He was worried about him. Do you mean you have doubts about having gone at all? He said, what do you mean? You mean you have doubts that you went to Ranchi? Did I go? Do you remember clearly? Now Bepin Babu asked him, did I go? Do you remember it clearly? Chunni sat down on the sofa, fixed Bepin Babu with a long, hard stare. Now he stared at him, looked at him very long and very hard. He concentrated on him and looked at him very hard and said, Bepin, have you taken to drugs or something? Means have you become a drug addict or something? He's saying. As far as I know, you had a clean record where such things were concerned. He said, well, as far as I know, you don't take drugs. You're absolutely clean. I know that old friendships don't mean much to you, but at least you had a good memory. He said, I know old friendships are not have no meaning for you. Old friends, you're not very keen about having old friends. They are meaningless to you. And he says, but at least you had a good memory. You can't really mean that you've forgotten about the Ranchi trip. You see, don't really mean that you've forgotten about the Ranchi trip. Do you? Have you forgotten? That is very shocking for Chunnilal. Bepin Babu had to turn away from Chunni's incredulous stare. Incredulous means he could not believe him. It was unbelievable. So he looked at him unbelievingly. Do you remember what my last job was? Asked Chunnilal. He said, do you remember what my last job was? Of course, you worked at a travel agency. So now Bepin Babu remembered, yes, you worked at a travel agency. You remember that, and you don't remember that it was I who fixed up your railway booking for Ranchi? He said, you don't remember that I had only got you the tickets. I had booked your railway tickets for Ranchi. I went to the station to see you off. And he said, I even went to the station to see you off. One of the fans in your compartment was not working. I got an electrician to fix it. He said, and when you sat in the train, in the compartment, one of the fans was not working. So he said, I went and I got the electrician and I got it fixed, the fan. Have you forgotten everything? Whatever is the matter with you? You don't look well, you know. So he said, what's the matter? Have you forgotten everything? He said, you don't look well. So Chunnilal was very concerned about him. Bepin Babu sighed and shook his head. He just shook his head. Oh no, he just can't remember any trip to Ranchi or anything that Chunnilal had done for him. I've been working too hard, he said at last. He said, oh, for 25 years, day and night he has been working, and he says, I've been working too hard. That must be the reason. Must see about consulting a specialist. He said, well, I think I must consider seeing a specialist. Doubtless it was Bepin's condition which made Chunnilal leave without mentioning anything about a job. So it was really, Bepin realized that Chunnilal did not ask him for a job because he understood what condition he was in, so he never asked him for a job. Paresh Chanda was a young physician with a pair of bright eyes and a sharp nose. So there was a young doctor, young physician, a young doctor. His name was Paresh Chanda. And he was he had bright eyes and a sharp nose. Must be a good-looking man. He became thoughtful when he heard about Bepin Babu's symptoms. So he started thinking. He was very thoughtful. Look, Dr. Chanda, said Bepin Babu desperately. Now he just did not know what to do. Bepin Babu was desperate now. You must cure me of this horrible illness. I can't tell you how it's affecting my work. He said, this is horrible illness. Please, doctor, you must cure me. And you don't know how my work is being affected by this. Dr. Chanda shook his head. You know what, Mr. Choudhury, he said, I've never had to deal with a case such as yours. He says, your case is a very strange case. I have never dealt with anything like this. Frankly, this is quite outside my field of experience. He said, I've never experienced this, so this is out of my field of experience. Because he must have been a young man, and he said, so he's saying, I don't have that experience to treat you in such a case. But I have one suggestion. He said, I suggest something. I don't know if it'll work, but it's worth a try. He said, I don't know whether it's going to work, but let us try it. It is worth trying. It can do no harm. So it will not harm you in any way. Bepin Babu leaned forward anxiously. Now he was very anxious. So he says, very worried. Anxiously means worriedly. As far as I can make out, said Dr. Chanda, as far as I can think, or as far as I can make out means as far as I can understand, Dr. Chanda said. And he said, and I think you're of the same opinion. You must have been to Ranchi. He says, maybe I think, and also you're also think that you must have, you're also thinking that you must have been to Ranchi, but due to some unknown reason, the entire episode has slipped out of your mind. The entire episode, this one trip has slipped out of your mind. We don't know what reason there is. So he says, what I suggest is that you go to Ranchi once again. So my suggestion is that you go to Ranchi once again. The sight of the place may remind you of your trip. Maybe when you go there, you will arrive there and you will see those places that others are saying that you were there. So you must go to those places, and maybe when you see that place, then you will remember. Then that memory will come back. This is not possible. More than that, I cannot do at the moment. So he says, now everything is, now this is not impossible, he says. This is not impossible. So what is possible is that you can go and see, and maybe then you will remember. More than that, I cannot do at the moment. He says, at this moment, I have nothing, I cannot give you anything else. I am prescribing a nerve tonic and a tranquilizer. So he says, I am giving you a nerve tonic, a tonic that will calm down your nerves, and a tranquilizer. So you will, sleep is essential or the symptoms will get more pronounced. He said sleep is very essential for you, very necessary for you. And because if you don't sleep, the symptoms will get more pronounced, they will get worse, and everybody will get to know that something is wrong with you. So that is, symptoms will get more pronounced. They will get worse.